Hi, everybody. I'm Amy.
And I'm Audrea.
And I'm Nicole.
This is the right crowd. So grab a cup of coffee
or a cup of tea
or a glass of water.
I forget the other part, so we're just going to start.
Let's do it.
I'll take a sip on that.
So as you guys can tell, this one's going to be a little different. I will let Audrea explain what we're doing today and introduce our guest.
Yes, well, we are going to be talking about, we promised you this last year, 27 Essential Principles of Story by Daniel Joshua Rubin. And we're doing this a little bit differently. Instead of just covering the book in one or two videos, we're going to be doing one or two chapters of the book over time. So we're doing this as a workshop, and you are welcome to get the book and work along with us. And tune in and comment on where you are each of the chapters as we go through them. But we are joined today by Nicole Rivera of Stop Writing Alone, which for those of you who are OGs, you'll recall that we met through Stop Writing Alone, or SWAP, as the OG from SWAP call it.
Yeah, this is all Nicole's fault. We'll just say that.
Yeah.
I don't mind. I don't mind creating things like this.
Thank you for joining us today, Nicole. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about, give an overview of the book and why we chose the book. And some of Nicole's group did the book in her group. So we're going to give her a chance to talk about the experience there. And for those of you who are thinking about doing an author craft book club, just listen in for some gotchas and some lessons learned. All right. And good stuff, of course. All right.
Yeah.
Nicole, do you want to tell us why you chose to do this book in your group?
Yeah, absolutely. As you guys know, we have a pretty regular family trip each summer that we go down to Florida because my in-laws live down there, and we spend a ridiculous amount of time down there. I was in a bookshop down there, Books A Million, which we don't have here up in New York, and I made a beeline for the writing section, as one does. And yes. I found this book that I had never seen in any of my other bookshops before. So I was like, I'm purchasing this and it'll be on my travels with me. Immediately went back to their house, started reading it, and stopped by chapter 3 because I decided two things. I did not want to read this alone. This is a problem I have. Not wanting to do things alone. But also I wanted to do it in a way that I thought was right. So you guys know from looking at the book, he's got 27 lessons in the book, and there are 27 writing lessons, and every single one of them has what he calls a master story, a term that we should probably change in 2025, but we'll roll with it, right? So the master story was like the story that best exemplified the lesson he was teaching. And the coolest thing about this book for me, as someone who loves story in all forms, was that like some of them were movies, some of them were short stories. There's like a stand-up comedy bit in here, all different types of stories. And I said, to do this right in my mind, I wanted to either watch or read or just immerse myself in that story before reading the lesson. So I think chapter 1 is like Finding Nemo or Hamlet. I mean, those are two extremes, but it's one of those. That gives you an idea of this book too, right? We have Hamlet, we have Finding Nemo. And so I said, I want to watch Finding Nemo first, then read it. And I think it would be great if I could bring it to the writing community and say, let's do this together. Let's make a book club or story club is what I ended up calling it, because they weren't all books, where we did each month one master story, which what did I end up calling it? Like the exemplar story of the month, and then the chapter. And it was just wonderful. It took me a while to sort of rally the troops and get everybody together, but I'm so happy that I decided to do this book that way. And that was really it. It was really the book that to me felt like it needed to be experienced that way. Now, I will say, you don't have to. You could read this book cover to cover and get the same sort of lessons, but I love reading, and there were a lot of stories on here, both movies and books, that I hadn't given the time to forever TBR or to be watched list. So I was like, this is another great opportunity. So yeah, and we should be reading extensively and widely as writers. And sometimes it's hard to pick those books and stories outside of our chosen, genre or category. And so I love that this book sort of pushed that and just gave me sort of a curriculum to follow. It's like some of the books definitely and stories were in line with the types of things that I write, and some were not, but it was great that I got to experience it that way. So I think I answered the question.
Did you did?
The book made me do it, is what happened.
I love it. And I got that because I'm in your group, and so I got the book when you guys, when you said this is a good book, I'm like, well, I'm one click buy, whatever Nicole said. But then I got the book, and I was going to read it on my own, and I told Amy, you should get this book. It's awesome. Maybe we should do it on the show. And then we were reading it as we do prior to doing it on the YouTube channel, and we were taking so long to read it because the exercises are so good. And that's one of the reasons we decided to do it a little bit differently. We were taking a long time to get through it, for one thing, and we wanted to spend more time talking about each of the chapters and the exercises. And that's
exactly.
You mentioned about the diversity of the content or media he chose to illustrate the story principles. I love that it's from animated to Shakespeare, from movies to books to plays. And I also love that he had so much diverse experience as a writer. So Daniel Joshua has written for TV, the WB, NBC, and he's written plays, and he's also taught creative writing. So I was drawn to that experience and also the examples of the media that he chose.
My thoughts are exactly what you said. Like, we both got the book, we started reading it, and we were like, wait a minute.
Right.
This is something that everybody, like, literally we started talking
about. The book demands it.
This is something that everybody, like, this would be a good one to do as a read along.
Yes.
And then she was like, wait a minute. I think Nicole, this is the one Nicole did. We should ask her, like, how it goes. So that's why it's because it is something that I think I can't, at the tip of my tongue, but it's something that I think where everybody comes together and gives their view, how they see it, because writers are so different in how they write, not just in the genres they write, but the way they form words.
Oh, yeah.
Thought processes. The three of us could read the same chapter in this book, and it would be something totally different for each of us.
Well, and that is something that I experienced going through this. It was so wonderful to do. Like I say, I always have that craving to not do these things alone. But then when it actually happens, it is that wonderful experience of just tossing around our own reads. Wait, I didn't see him say that. Where?
Yeah.
Yes.
What? Oh, really? And then also, this hits right into my project right now. I can't believe it. I'm thinking about this with my character, and I think I can do this. And just tossing off those. So it's like each writer having their own reads. Amazing. Their own experience of like, yeah, I feel like a writing professor said something like this before, and then them going off on a tangent of how the lesson can be expanded in some way. People's experience of reading or viewing these stories before, and how seeing it or reading it on their own differed than seeing or reading it through the lens of the lesson. So cool. I mean, even for me, there are some in here that like are in my blood. Finding Nemo, for example. Pulp Fiction. I was a huge film buff in the 90s. You know what I mean? So like, I hadn't come back to Pulp Fiction in so long. And then to watch it again, but with this along with it, first of all, it was hilarious. I was like, was it that violent? I didn't remember that. Anyway, but absolutely to have the different writers' perspectives, lived experiences, writing experiences, and reading experiences, it just enriched everything so much more. So it feels like a writing course smashed into a book.
It does.
And so many of our writing craft books want to be that. But I think the thing that so many of them are missing is leaning on the great literature and story of the past, right? So many of our writing craft books come off as, I'm going to tell you what I learned about writing. I'm the expert. And there's always stuff to be gained from that. And that's wonderful. But we always say, like, the best way that we can learn is through reading more. And this book not only tells us that, but gives us a path to reading more, in conjunction to the lesson. Read this for this lesson, read that for this lesson. And that, yeah, it was really great.
Yep.
I know. Sorry.
Go ahead, Amy.
I was going to say, I learn best when I see it, hear it, write it.
Right.
So to watch the thing, which I hadn't thought about doing, but now that you're talking about it, I'm like, great, now I'm going to have to go back and watch all. Like, watch the thing and then read the thing.
Yeah.
And discuss it and be able to take notes on it. I might actually learn.
I'll say this. He does an incredible job of summarizing. Like, it really is a book where I could say, you don't have to. When I first had the onus that, I need to do this right, I felt like there's no way this summary is doing justice to the lesson. Let me see the story. Let me read the story again. But even when I did it, I'm like, nah, he like nailed it. He's picking out the parts perfectly. But there is, just like you were saying, Amy, before, each writer has their own perspective and unique way of seeing things. I think each of us individually experiencing the stories through our own eyes gives it something. It gives it something a little bit more that we cannot fully get from a summary, So, yeah, I highly recommend doing that as much as you can. There was definitely like one or two stories that I either didn't finish or didn't get in time. And so I didn't get to do it with the lesson. But for the most part, I was able to do all of them.
So how long did your group? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. I went first last time. It's your turn.
Well, how long did it take your group to go through the book?
So it took a little over 2 years. It might have been 3 because it was supposed to be, no, it was just over 2 years. It was supposed to be 27 months. But as we went through, there were a couple of chapters that we put together. So for instance, there's like one chapter, one lesson that is around the song Stan by Eminem. So it's literally listening to a song or looking at lyrics and then reading the lesson. And I feel like that one came next to another one that was sort of shortish. I didn't do anything out of order. And I'm really happy I didn't, by the way, if you guys are thinking about that, because they do connect and they're sequential. Like I will say chapters 1, 2, 3, if people don't have the time or want to invest in a whole, like, sit down and read, chapters 1, 2, 3 are like things that I would recommend every writer read and try to do the full blown thing, because what was it? It was drop the hammer, ask a dramatic question, explore all endings. It was basically like beginning, middle, end, boom, boom, boom. And we should sort of have this caveat somewhere. For a Western style told story, right? All of this is about the story, the blockbuster type story told in the United States and Western culture. So if that's what you're going for, if that's what you want, this book is it. And that 1, 2, 3 punch is fantastic. And that show, The Night Of, was really good. That was in chapter 3. I had never watched it, but I'm just trying to scan through to see where Stan was. But just as an example, like, that is a situation where it was like something short. So we might have hit it closer to the 27 months than I thought we were going to, because I did skip months if I was on vacation or something. But we really tried to stick to like one lesson, 1 month.
Interesting. Very cool.
So did you watch the thing and then read it, or did you read it and then watch the thing?
So I ended up trying to do the thing first, always. So that, because his summary was so good, right? And of course, he's going to do spoilers and everything. That's the whole point. He needs to tell us everything for us to fully understand the story. And as students of story, we need to know all that. But I part of my experiment with this was to fully experience these stories as the storyteller intended. So I tried to, as much as possible, get the thing done before I read the summary, in case he went all the way through, big spoilers, endings, and that. Especially, I mean, some of the lessons are about endings, so you kind of want to get through it as much as possible.
Okay.
But again, I think it depends on how do you, as a story consumer, feel about spoilers in the first place. Sometimes I would do that, and then it would make me almost want to like go do the thing again. It's like, oh, this one, I feel like I should have read his thing first. So it could depend on the story itself and you as a reader, story person.
Got it. And I love the way he's broken the book up. So you could almost like,
Right.
Amy and I take and do 1 to 3 videos per book if it's a big book. Some of the other ones we had to do multiple videos on because they were so dense. But this one, he's broken.
Don Truby, we're talking to you.
Oh, Truby. Hell, yes. Damn it.
That's all I'm going to say. Woo!
Goodness. Pack a lifetime in a book, please.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh, big and all writing. Oh my God.
Right.
But for those of you, so when you look at this book, he's broken it out into 3 sections: the essential principles,
Yeah.
the essential principles of character, and the essential principles of setting, dialogue, and theme.
So the way that Audrey and I were going to break it up is we were going to do 2 lessons a week.
Yeah.
There was one we were grouping together, and then at the end we were grouping the conclusion together with the last 2 chapters. We were grouping 17, 18, and 19 together.
I'll just tell you, chapter 26 is the Brothers Karamazov. If you are going to take on that book, that's a beast. It's a beast. It's a large one.
Good to know.
So we probably should do that one by itself.
If you are doing it right. If you're I gave that book 2 months just because I knew me.
Had you read
that's
Brothers Karamazov before, or was this your first time?
No, that was my first time. So that was part of it that I was like, oh my God. And I don't think I finished. Yeah, I think that's one that I didn't finish because it was just so beastly. It landed like around holidays too. So it was a good time to sort of say, let's have an extra month. And so, but that did not help me with my extra reading time because family things.
Yeah,
So,
right.
But yeah, so I would say I definitely thought I tried to do like a 1 chapter, 1 month sort of rhythm and just say like, that's it. But then I realized, let me look at the stories and make the decisions that way.
Mhm.
And it will probably slip into something close that you like that. That is just one example of one that is like, okay, hold my tea. That's a large one. It's a large one and it's an old one. And I don't know about you guys, but I read 2 things very slowly, and that's classics and nonfiction. Some people can burn through nonfiction, but my brain is like, wait, what?
I burn through fiction. I can read a fiction in a day. Other things, I want to like take it in and soak on it. Like
it takes time. Yeah. My brain just is like, well, what was one more time? And I'm like, what, dude, we saw the words. What?
Yeah. That's ADHD. And all of that. Sometimes when we're reading, I'll like be 3 pages in and be like, wait.
Why did I flip those?
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. So it sounds like what you're saying is we need to rethink our plan for this.
I mean, and it could take you about 5 minutes. It really is just about getting a sense of what the stories are. Because then some of them are movies. So maybe you want to do like movie and a read, or you know what I'm saying? So like, let me just look. Right. So Hamlet and Finding Nemo were the first 2. I could easily see those 2 going together. Mm-hmm. The Night of Chapter 3 is a series on HBO. So that's multiple episodes of something. Very good. I do recommend it. It was a lot of fun. And then But then chapter 4 is a South Park episode, which honestly, they come up again, I think, later on. They were really good. They were interesting. Then you have Pulp Fiction, which is a movie. And then again, so you see how the rhythm for you is working.
Yeah, I can
far,
see
right?
it. I see it, yes.
Because then you have an episode of Breaking Bad. That's fine. If Beale Street Could Talk, that's James Baldwin. It's a skinny book. So, or a movie. You could do either. So if you wanted to go either way. But then you have Frankenstein, which is an older book. And again, like for me, a little
That'll
bit
take
of
me a little while to read.
I need time. Godfather Part 2 is a movie. Late Spring. Was that a movie too? I think that was a movie. A really old movie? Hold on a second. 122. Where are we? Eyes.
Okay, so we're gonna need to just rethink. Some of these will take longer, and we'll just have to break the videos up a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think
yes,
we just
that was
need
that
to,
black and
like,
white
we'll
movie.
just look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, 5 to 10 minutes of just getting a sense of what they are and then just planning it out that way.
And I'm going to go over again how the book is broken up. So 27 Essential Principles of Story is broken up into 27 chapters.
Exactly.
Yeah, doing it that way in such a logical way. And then he's got it in 3 parts. So part 1 is the essential principles of plot. And so those are all the things that Nicole was going over. Drop the hammer. He references Hamlet, and then Ask Dramatic Questions, Finding Nemo. Part 2 is 19 chapters, and that's the essential principles of character. And then part 3 is essential principles of setting, dialogue, and theme. So by the end of this book, if you're reading along, you read the whole book or read the book in its entirety, you're going to get all of those principles and really good examples of all of those principles. And then 1 or 2 reference books, movies, cartoons, or animated features for those. And then what's really nice about it, and I wanted to ask you about this as well, Amy, is the book has exercises and I'm sorry, Amy and I love the exercises in these craft books if you guys have been with us for a while. But then he also has not just exercises, but he has a final exam, little questions at the end for final. Did you really get the concept? If you did, then you can answer this. And I love that. I love being challenged, especially mention the ADD or ADHD, because you could miss stuff. But if you read the final exam, so don't skip that. And if you can answer the questions, then you most likely you got it. You got the concept and how it can work in a work of fiction. And then on top of that, he's got continuing ed. So yet another reference that you can, like another film or book that you can use to understand that concept or that principle of fiction or principle of story. So I love how he's broken that up.
As a former educator, this really like sang to me, and that's why when I got this book, it was like it seemed to be the perfect thing to do with Stop Running Alone. And I kicked myself that I didn't record them and move forward and have them sort of captured not only the way we discussed it, but like the reactions of my fellow readers with it, because it's really, really interesting. Number one, the layout of things, as I said, you kind of do want to go in order because he will continue to refer to things like drop the hammer and the asking dramatic questions. Like that's throughout the book. But the final, we would have jokes every month about the final question, the final exam. It's like, all right, what do we think about this one? Because some of them were great. And some of them were like, dude, it could have been like 4 answers. I don't even want to hear this right now. So we would have, what's really great about having and I know you guys were talking about this, having an author's sort of craft book club is that kind of conversation too. A lot of times when we're reading these books on our own, we feel as though the person in print is the expert and we just sort of have to take it on whole. But when you have a community to sort of discuss these things with, you can read critically too. And be like, I love what he did in chapter 1 and chapter 2. I don't know if I'm feeling lesson 7. Did you guys feel lesson 7? Or I can see I think what he was trying to say or what would apply to my writing is this, but I don't know. He kind of went in a different direction. So all those different, I think having that rhythm in each chapter helped us to sort of know what to expect from him as a writer and how to sort of consume each of the lessons. But then as we got further in the book, we became more comfortable in being critical of it and just saying, this one feels way patriarchal, like what is he trying to say right now about this particular story? I don't want to write my story like that. But again, overall, most of it was just golden and wonderful. But I loved that when you brought up the final exam, it just reminded me of the hilarity of each week would be like, final exam, win or lose? What are we, like that was the first place that we started to fall because it was a multiple choice question. And, again, as a former teacher, multiple choice questions are hard to encapsulate big ideas. So it's not on him. I mean, some of these things, it's just rough to make a multiple choice question of. But as a storyteller, he's incredible because basically what he does every single chapter is introduce a story idea that exemplifies the lesson that he created himself, and I'm like, God, that's exhausting. This book must be exhausting to write. So, and the continuing ed, I was kind of like on the edge of my seat on when we completed as to whether or not I should offer Story Club up again with this, see if the different group members wanted to attend and then do the continuing ed story as the exemplar story for each lesson. But it may come down the pike at some point, but not right now. But I love that because some of those stories were even more familiar to me. So like I could look at it and say, okay, I didn't need to rewatch. I think he references Rocky in one of them. Like I know my Rocky, So
yeah,
but it's also just again going back to like what we were saying on the top. We need to be reading widely and consuming widely. It's just more recommendations of stuff to read. So, or consume, because again, I say read, I accept audiobook, print, film, comic books. That's all story. If you are consuming story,
exactly.
Read. That's reading.
Yeah. However you get it into your noggin is reading. And is story. Right. So I was going to ask, oh gosh, now I forgot my question. So I completely forgot. So we'll just.
I'm sorry.
No, we leave it all in. We're not doing.
Hey, all right. Okay, here's the thing. So when you talk about going through the examples and the type of writer you are is either informed by the book or you can take what you learn up from the book or you can leave some of it behind.
Absolutely.
The lessons didn't resonate. What types of writers do you think this book is for? Like we go from beginners, like haven't written anything, new to creative writing, to intermediate, have read some things, have written, have finished things, to people who are like selling on a regular basis, more advanced writers. What type of writer do you think this book is for?
Well, I think as I said before, I think those first 3 chapters would benefit anyone. I think that can meet you where you're at because it's really talking about what we need to think about for getting into story. That's drop the hammer is kind of like, that first big thing that happens in the story that hooks us. So anybody that wants to write something appealing needs to sort of think about that. And I think he does a good job of explaining what the characteristics of that are in a way that's not too overwhelming. And then the next 2 sort of continue off of that, the asking the dramatic questions and exploring all endings. Those are really just like the basic structure, as he says, and that's the whole section on plot. So I would say that is something that's good for everybody. And then this book can sort of grow with you. And that's my concern about taking this book and reading it cover to cover really quickly, because I do think it's a lot. As you guys said, it's just like, holy moly, this is just a heck of a lot. So I feel like if you take it slow, you can grow with the book. And for more seasoned writers, it's just, you get to a point as a seasoned writer where you know how you write, you know how you approach story, you know how you revise story. But this is just it's someone else's perspective, and it's not just his, because it does also bring in the other story. So it feels like a little writing community conversation in and of itself around, this is what I think happens with theme. This is how I look at characters being created. I'm just trying to see some of the other. I'm wondering now that I'm looking at it, if it's not the same for the part 2, if those first 3 wouldn't work for a more beginning writer in an intro to character. You want to make your hero active and decisive. That's it. That's an interesting, by the way, exemplar story. It's a video game, Red Dead Redemption. So that's 40 hours of story. So you could read the summary on that one, but there's also YouTube run-throughs of video games, and some people just do like recap of the story. So you could search for that. I may have a link for you guys somewhere. But right. So, and then the second one is a comment, is that the stand-up? I think that's the stand-up or storytelling. But anyway, my point being that there are aspects of this book that I hate to say any book is for everyone. Like that's not, we all know. But I feel like this book can meet you where you're at. You know, I think it can really, I do believe there were probably some lessons that would be a little too much for somebody that's just getting started. But I would highly recommend those first 3 chapters for somebody that's just getting started as an example. If that, did I dodge that question?
No, you didn't. I feel like I'm like, I don't know. No, I thought you answered it.
Okay, great. Because I'm really feeling like I'm leaning towards it's for everyone, and I hate saying that.
See, I think everything could be for everyone.
Yeah.
On how their perspective is on it.
Yeah. And I will say, to go back to about what type of writers, not thinking level, but also what type of story do you want to write? If you want to write something that is more in outside of the Western culture, that is very like maybe even a fairy tale, because fairy tale doesn't follow the similar beats of, the hero's journey. Like if you're going to write a hero's journey type story, something that is, bestseller, blockbuster sort of movie, that type of traditional story that I kind of grew up on. Yes, for sure. This is all about how to get our hero on that journey, have those successes, have those failures, rise back up again. And that sort of get us through that pattern of story. But for people that are off of that path a bit or looking to do something different, there will be aspects that'll be helpful. Developing character, but not everything is going to apply. And guess, it's also not for everyone, because it's also not every chapter is for everyone. It's one of those. It's really, I would say, come to it critically. And I think we should do that with all writing craft books, but this one has some really good places to sort of debate sometimes about the merits of the lesson. Does it apply to what I'm doing? Would I, give this advice? I don't know. So yeah, but I do really love the book in general. I love the experience overall.
Well, I think that you make a great point in that this book could be for everyone, but I think not everyone is for this book. So if you're looking for a formulaic craft book that'll give you the beats to follow along, that's not this book. It could be Save the Cat.
Right.
Or there's some other books that do that, or like Romancing the Beats, or the ones that they have for mysteries. But if you really want to dive into story, this could be for you. And I think for absolute beginners who've never written anything or taken any creative writing classes, if you would really lock down and read it and use the examples, you learn a lot from this book.
It feels like a mini course. And to sort of to jump off like the beats, I think what's very interesting is that all of those books and all of those, they are structures, right? So they're story structures that can tell us, I want to do A, B, C, D. But what do we do in between? How do we connect those dots? How do I get from beat 1 to beat 2? And, and people will say, well, that's writing. Go do that. Okay, thanks. I feel like this book is the guidance to sort of fill in that space. So there are some lessons that you can see like, oh, okay, that fits in really well with Save the Cat. Like that is the journey that I want to be on as I go from, the first third of the story to the second third. But yeah, it's not a structure in and of itself, but I think it really does complement those structures because again, like I'm saying, that's the Western sort of structure that we're like, yay, USA, we love those stories.
You do. I like
I do. I do. And I think for many of us that have been raised in this story culture, when we first start writing, whether we want to or not, that's how our stories are coming out of our brain. The first time that I learned those beats, I had a draft and I knew something was off in like the last third. And I was like, I don't know what the heck's going on. And I took my story and I filled in the beats and I literally couldn't fill in like 3 or 4 of them. And I'm like, oh, I'm missing. It's off rhythm. I'm missing those beats. And that's where those structures come in very handy. And then a book like this will help us make all the beauty that comes in between those.
Very, very cool. Well, speaking of Save the Cat and what you do with your group, why don't you take a few minutes and tell us what your group is, and where people can reach you? And
sure. Yeah. So I'm over at stopwritingalone.substack.com, and that is basically like a newsletter, but it's also where you find the calendar events of all the things that I'm doing with writers online in little boxes like this. So we do writing prompt parties, write-ins, writing practice. If you are a Natalie Goldberg fan, I do writing practice every single month, and we'll have goal meetings and lots of chats. We just had our social Saturday yesterday, which is a long form write-in and chat. But the other thing that we do is Story Club, which is this book club that sort of got born out of this book because, as I said, this book demanded it be read this way. But as I was coming to the end of it, I was really concerned about like, what do I do next? I don't want to just read a craft book that, we could read in a week or a month or what have you. I wanted to have this experience again of drawing it out, but also having literature to support the lesson. And I was racking my brain like crazy. And then I was thinking about how from like day one in Stop Writing Alone, we're always talking about Save the Cat Writes a Novel. Like everybody talks about this book.
Yeah.
We all talk about the beats, but we've never sat to read it together. I'm like, okay, but I could sort of read that in a month. And then I remembered how the book was written. And it's not every single chapter like Rubin, but starting with chapter 4, there are books that she uses as she writes a full beat sheet for. So chapter 4 is Girl on a Train, and she does the beat sheet for. So essentially the next round of Story Club is going to be us going through this book and doing what we did with Rubin's book. We will read Girl on a Train and we will read chapter 4, and we will meet to discuss the book Girl on a Train and the beats. And for me personally, like I said, I've been talking about the beats and using the beats for so long. I get the beats, but it's the in between. And I feel like repeating this over and over again. And we're talking about like blockbuster books. We have Girl on a Train. We've got Kite Runner. Harry Potter's coming up in there. There's a lot of different books. We're going to, I hope, replicate this experience of seeing how so many different authors connect the dots that I'm going to start to see in my own story, like how I want to approach that messy middle. It's really the middle. It's all about the middle always. It's always about the messy middle. So, and I will say, I do have 2 sort of book clubs that I'm doing because inspired by this book. You guys talked about the writing exercises, and what I had originally done for like the first full third of this book is I would create supplemental writing exercises to also try to practice what we were learning. And I was coming to each meeting and discussing the writing exercise. Nobody did their homework except me. I didn't do the homework. I was like, so are the writing exercises not sort of worth it? Yeah. And everybody decided like not to do on our own. Maybe we can do them in the meeting together. And I was like, okay, we're going to step away from that. And so I realized that what I was trying to do was I was trying to make this a discussion book and a workbook. And it's too much. So this year I have, this is our discussion book. We're going to read and we're going to discuss all of the stuff that's going on. And then I have another book, which I can't find right now. It's called The Practicing Poet, which was written for poets. That is nothing but writing exercises with reading within. Again, it's mostly poetry. But I have found since going to various workshops and working on my own poetry, and I am not a poet, ladies. No. But it has brought so much to my fiction. And it's happened in short stories and in our writing prompt parties. A number of times that I've read my story aloud and people have been like, it sounds so lyrical. It's starting to sound like poetry. And I'm like, oh my gosh, something's happening. Something is happening that is shriveling over. And so that is another book. It's by Diane Lockward. She has a number of books like this, but The Practicing Poet is the one that we're going to be starting this year. And we're going to be taking it incredibly slow, just like these books, one chapter per month. And that's something else that's just going to be going on in Stop Writing Alone. And that's where we're going to do the writing exercises in the meeting. So that'll be our workbook book club. And then we have our discussion book club, in addition to all of our writing events.
Very, very.
That's me. That's my fun little aside over there. There are meetings each month that are for free. And then there is a subscription, and things like the book clubs are usually under the subscription. So it's either $15 a month or $150 for the year over and Stop Writing Alone. And it's fun.
It's fun. I really enjoy your group. And when
Thank you.
it saved me, I think I can't remember when I joined, but just being able to see and talk about writing in a community, and that's what you really talk about, building community around writing. It just
Absolutely.
I just felt like, oh, I found my tribe, and then these people care about story and about improving, and it's a great group. It's a great group.
Yeah, thank you. We have fun. And it's like, it's so cool to be online like this because it's like international. I mean, I'm hanging out with people from the UK, Taiwan, then all across the States all the time. I mean, I have to get my time zones down for everybody, but that's been a really cool sort of life boost in addition to the writing boost, to just be exposed to so many different people from different spaces all the time.
Cool beans. Well, speaking of going back to Save the Cat, we did that on our channel. So if you guys have not watched that one, go back and look through and take a look at that book. And that one is always worth a reread. And I am actually reading, it's coming up in my list, Save the Cat, the original. So
Blake's.
Yeah, Blake's Save the Cat. So we did Save the Cat Writes a Novel, and I started rereading because I picked it up at a bookstore. It was one of my hauls. I go through all the used bookstores and see what writing books I can find, and it was one of my hauls, and I picked it up, and it was really good. I mean, of course it's good. It's a
right,
but it was really just informing just my novel writing. So that was why I decided I'm gonna.
Yeah, you look at his book and you can see like where Jessica was like, why didn't anybody just make this connection? And then she's just been raking it in. She just released Save the Cat Writes a YA novel for the YA crew. So that's another one it's on my shelf. I have to dig in.
I'm gonna get that one from my TBR too. Well, we are gonna wrap up. For Amy, did you want to add anything more about what we're doing with the 27 Essentials of Story? Or
nope.
Coming up?
I think we covered it all, except for like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, please. I'm definitely going to be rewatching your Save the Cat videos as I'm going through.
It was in the beginning, so like, anything they're like.
Yeah, but I was hanging with you guys before the beginning, so it's all cool for me.
You know what? I think you started that group in March or April of 2020.
April 2020, because I almost canceled it.
We've all known each other for almost 5 years.
Isn't that nuts?
That is crazy.
It is amazing when you stop.
It's probably one of my longest relationships besides my husband and Jesus.
We rank.
Well, on that,
Audrea, she might talk to us on a hike. She might let us walk with her.
I would totally invite you guys on a hike. That's fun. Randy can stay home and watch the dogs. You guys can go with me.
I love that.
Well, with that, we'll end it here. Tune in to the channel for the weekly chats about the chapters, and we'll go over the exercises. We'll also be covering other books this year in our regular overview or author craft book club on the Right Crowd. So that's it for me. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys. Bye.